Cool. Then again, hello everyone. Hello from Nairobi in Kenya. That's where I'm based and where MENA Africa has the Africa headquarter. The lovely picture that you can see on the first of my slides is taken in Kigali. For the ones who don't know, that's the capital of Rwanda, one of the rising stars, if I may call it, in the region. Small in size, has quite an interesting history and really rose from the ashes, if I may say, when it comes to economic development and also when it comes to overall developing the region and their country in particular. But let me invite you briefly to the continent. Depending on how familiar you are with the continent, that's one of my favorite slides to either shock people or to surprise people. These are, let's say, some 8 key facts that we like to enjoy to show and everyone who is interested on the continent. One number that always strikes me here is that we have around 400 companies with an annual revenue of about 1 billion USD. I think a lot of people who think about the continent think we have small firms here. Yes, we do have them a lot, but also there are quite a number of large firms on the continent, which I think often is underestimated. Other than that, of course, I mean, Africa is always associated with the resources. Yes, for sure. I think the wealth in the rich countries is often on the back of our countries here. Thinking of our smartphones, our e-cars, and whatever it is, all the resources are sourced down here. But again, also, it is a new time. Africa is as a whole developing rapidly. Certainly, COVID hit the markets like everywhere in the world, but we are rebounding quite quickly. And I think for everyone who has an interest in the region should really have their eyes out on what's going on down here. Allow me to quickly talk about who we are. MENA Africa, you see where we are present. We have 4 offices on the continent. Myself, I'm based here in Kenya. We're also based in Nigeria, Ghana, and South Africa. And from those hubs, we call them, we serve the region. As an example, we are currently working in West Africa on a project in 9 French-speaking West African countries, and we manage them from our hubs in Lagos and Accra. And then, of course, we scale up with local consultants on the ground in case we are not present locally. Just a quick visualization, small, humble team. We just reached 14 this month. Actually, we had the biggest growth throughout COVID. It's a bit of a surprise, but it sort of shows, I think, the need of having local support. And that way we've been managing quite well over the last couple of years now to really make a stance in the markets. What is it we do? I think I usually divide it between white collar and blue collar. Yes, we do get our hands dirty as well, but if you want, we also present you with nice PowerPoint slides. But jokes aside, mainly what we do is advising our firms to enter the markets locally. Right, and often, depending on how far the companies are, it starts with really advising and providing market data from a region where data is really scarce. And if you find data, it's really hard to really verify the data. It's a nightmare to an extent, but I believe that's where the business model kicks in to really assist companies to find that data. Often, certainly that results in strategy. How do I enter the market? What do I need to do? And when we move to the blue collar, what we realized is that yes, we're not talking a lot about big FDI investments into our region. It usually takes time, and that time can be the bridge can be gapped when we look into actually helping them selling or entering the market physically. So that is when we sort of help them establish their sales structures. For some clients, we are the official representatives in the markets. So for them, having a low risk but high return approach. And certainly the low risk comes in when they contract us to do the work on the ground. We usually employ sales guys for them on their behalf on our payroll. So the risk is low. They just have a minimum monthly commitment. And then we move within the markets, because one thing that I really believe in is that there is a market for almost every product on the continent, right? And as I stated on the headline, the question is, do you know how to enter the market? And a lot of firms try and then realize, oh, maybe it's a bit tougher than I thought, and then often blame it on the size of the market. But once you really got your foot here into the markets, you realize if you do it right, there definitely is money to be made, right? And usually we see growth rates easily in the 2 digits numbers on the continent. That is an average growth for a new entry into a market here on the continent. You might wonder, what type of industries are we serving? Certainly we are quite on a client base, quite Eurocentric, to be honest. Also maybe due to our German heritage. So we're targeting the typical mid-sized companies we work for. Industry-wise, it's throughout, right? This afternoon we have a kickoff in the oil and gas marine industry. We're working currently on a juice beverage project in West Africa. We're working in construction here in the East, agriculture, whatever it is, we usually try to see if we can create value or not, and then openly communicate that and see what is possible within the market environment. Also, to be honest, we have cases where we say no, it's not possible because maybe a product might be too specialized. So that might be sometimes the case, or the expectations are different. But usually we try at least to look into, can we, if us as a firm cannot support them, who else can we connect them with on the ground to exercise the work? I want to give you a couple of examples. Actually, I brought 3 today of general projects and also what are the challenges. This is the project conducted in Kenya. It's within the construction sector. And basically the bottom line is here is venturing into the affordable housing / housing or building construction sector in the region. For the people who are familiar with the continent, we have a massive gap of housing on the continent, and that is almost across every single country. Why? Because we have a high growth, population growth rate, and at the same time, we have a high level of urbanization. And right now everyone moves to cities, but you see how they're getting bigger and bigger. But proper housing often is not really what people can find unless they have the budgets to pay for it. And that is something that client is venturing into. It's basically a portable precast plant. Sounds a bit like Lego, and has a similar element, the way they build, but it's all about increasing the speed of construction. It's about cutting the costs of construction and eventually providing higher quality. So the typical attributes which I would say a typical European company brings when they enter a new market. For them, one of the key challenges was to understand how and where. So we looked into East Africa and we ended up with Kenya and Rwanda as key markets. Because they simply offer the highest growth and also are the most stable ones when it comes to financial stability and so on. And currently we work with them in market. Another quick one I want to give you is just an example, an excerpt of one of the projects. If you are into the bodybuilding industry or the crane industry, I'll just take a picture now because this is like an overview of the market within the bodybuilding industrial equipment suppliers and well, for that client, the competing firms in the market in Kenya. It's a client who is into cranes built on trucks. So whatever you have to move with a truck on it, that is where the client is in. And a typical example here was to map the markets for them, to identify prospective partners, and eventually how to venture into the market. So a quick snappy overview, and of course then you go further. I mean, you guys are in the same industry, you know what's next, contacts, meetings, portfolios, etc. Something that we would support them with. Another element here, this is a cross-country project as an example, also to see that some clients are not just focusing on one country. That one was for quite a large multinet who looked into several countries, East Africa and West Africa, food and beverage sector. They wanted to know about the level of automation in the region for the food and beverage sector, but of course, who are the key players, what's their output, where can we automate processes, and how can we grow, but respectively also what does the industry has to offer. So key issue again, access, right? Even as a big firm with thousands of staff worldwide, they simply did not get the information that they were looking for. Also because some of them were very sensible, you know, they were looking at capex and opex figures, which if I can tell you for free, is not a nice question you want to ask a firm, because everyone's trying to hide that. But at the same time, it is relevant if you want to build a business case. So the challenge for us as local consultants is to have a very strong message or story. Why are we doing what we are doing? And also have to be a bit creative of finding that information, or again, be very well connected so that you at least get indicators of where their capex and opex or general financial stability is currently located. Again, also what I find interesting is just sharing a few key lessons, depending on what markets you guys are looking at or familiar with. I would say African markets, in particular sub-Saharan African markets, are quite different, if I may say so, and are also quite challenging. One thing here is I mentioned the point of data. Data is simply available. Whatever you hear around from data providers, etc., I can just advise you, ask them how they got the information. If they're tapping into, it's a big word these days, data crawling, trust me, there is not much to crawl, right? Registrars are scarce. Companies don't have to file any returns unless they are listed. If you want to know, let's say what their website looks like, the majority of companies here, especially the old ones, don't have websites. They simply have a massive market that they need to serve, and there's no much need for them to look outward, right? That's why you find a lot of them not being on the standard that we might be used to in Europe or North America or even in Asia. That is, I think, generally one of the key problems. Another issue that a lot of our clients are facing is if they want to sell something here, the question is how to finance, right? So we have average interest rates across the continent in 2 digits. Kenya has an interest rate of 14%. Ghana is on 25%. So I don't think you have to be a business person to know it doesn't make sense to borrow. So the question is, how do you finance if you are into the selling business, right? Either it's cash, right? That's one element. That's why I also give everyone the advice, if you meet an African businessman or woman, have a lot of respect for them because they built their empire on cash. No loans or maybe some family support or anything like that. That's either how it works. But really, firms here, it's a cash society. And then you're loaning from friends or that kind of stuff. But of course, if you're in industry, it's tough to lend or borrow a few million euros every now and then. So it's really a step-by-step, a gradual approach. That means also that you find a lot of big companies here who start taking on literally everything within their value chain, right? If you are in Europe, we are very specialized in one thing or one product. Here you find companies taking on everything from, let's say, the packaging to the actual product to the distribution. It's often a one-stop shop. Why? Because it's tough to rely on third parties here, to be honest, in a lot of cases. So a lot of companies see that as an opportunity and venture into those areas. You have firms who started off producing, let's say, being a typical rice miller. And what did they end up? They are now providing packaging solutions to the industry. Right, so that is a typical way ahead. Another learning also is what I usually tell clients is about relationship building. It's a very much of a handshake society, and I think I can almost speak for the entire continent. We believe in trust, and a lot of preconception about the continent is that there is not much trust. I think it's the wrong terminus. We have to just see who we can trust. And if you find someone you can trust trust me, you can really bet on them and trust them with your life. It's fascinating and very rewarding doing business here with people that you build a long-term relationship, right? And a handshake really is a handshake here. But I also have to say the risk on the other side is that you run into a lot of people who use that trust, right? So that is the key challenge that a lot of companies overall are facing. And also, I think if you venture into the markets or you're looking into some of them, don't expect to receive feedback or be very well connected by email or call or something like that. It is, are you here or are you not here, right? And a lot of companies do the mistake. I call it the fly in, fly out strategy. They fly to Nairobi. They have meetings with industry players in probably their hotel environment because it's easy traffic-wise and so on. You don't have to move. Then you fly home. You had great discussions. You think you're going to seal the deal. And then you fly home and you hear nothing, right? It's a very common pattern that you see across the continent. And why? It's because they go back and either have another offer or simply say, well, if you're not around, how can I trust you that your machine will be serviced when I have a problem? Or do you have to fly in again? So yeah, I think also looking at time, Charlotte, as a German, I try to keep my time. 15 minutes are more or less up. I hope I stimulate a little bit or gave you some stimulus for the discussion. Happy to take anything on and would more than welcome you in person at some point on the continent, because one thing for sure, I mean, COVID, yes, is still around and not everyone really knows how problematic or how deeply rooted it is already, but business here is back to normal on most of the fronts. We have some general restrictions. Traveling is usually not a problem, just with the usual COVID test that you required. But apart from that, I think bottom line is we're open and ready and remain ready for business overall. So yeah, Charlotte, over to you and everyone else who wants to join the discussion.
Thank you very much, Holger. Very inspiring indeed.